Welcome to Stoughton Spotlight. I'm your host, Jeffrey Pickette. This is a special edition of Stoughton Spotlight, Conversations with the Candidates, where I'll be interviewing the candidates running for selectmen and school committee in the 2016 town election cycle in Stoughton. On this episode, I'm joined by the incumbent member of the Board of Selectmen, TJ Recupero. So thank you for joining me, TJ.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And so we'll just start things off to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. Last time you ran, you were unopposed, which kind of hard to believe that for major office in Stoughton, selectmen or school committee, unopposed. But just 3 years ago, that was the case. Not so this time around. So welcome on, and we'll give you a chance to kind of tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Running unopposed isn't unique in this town, unfortunately, but this time there is opposition. But for my own part, I've done the job for the last 3 years. I'm a lifelong resident of Stoughton. Excuse me, I'm an attorney. I practice law in Stoughton. I have another office in Milton where I do work with a solar company also. My plan is to stay in Stoughton forever, so I run for the sole purpose of making sure my hometown remains the best town that it can be, and I think what would be both my eyes and hopefully the eyes of the community as well. So I can tell you more about myself. I come from a family of 8 children. My father was a dentist, has a practice that he's had for over 50 years in town, and he and my mother still live in the same place they lived 50 years ago on Marin Avenue. Although my brothers and sisters have spread a little bit further than Stoughton, we all come back to home and we all still care about the community, and I've chosen to serve it in this fashion.
So this election season, within the last couple of weeks as of filming this program, the election took a little bit of a different twist when you add in what happened with the police chief announcing his retirement, resignation, however you want to term it. So this has obviously been an ongoing issue, and it's one that's played out in many different ways, shapes, and forms, including on social media, where you have responded to a lot of comments and criticisms about the situation. So just to kind of start off from a very global perspective, your reactions to the police chief announcing his resignation, and for the reasons that he did announce his resignation.
Sure. Well, it was a surprise. I mean, it was a surprise to, I think, everybody on the board. It ties into a personnel matter that was decided by the town manager as his authority under the charter. The police chief announced with his resignation that he didn't agree with it and wasn't, I don't want to characterize his position, he's been very vocal about it, but he wasn't happy with the process that was used, and he was very clear about it in his statement. Town manager and he have both issued statements about what happened and why they did what they did, and that's a continuing situation that still plays out. I did see, and I can say this, that board got a request from the police chief to meet with the board at an upcoming meeting, and it'll be executive session. But I was glad to see that, because if there's an opportunity that we can sit and discuss things and try to work things out, because the chief, we just signed a 3-year contract as of last July, and I was involved in those negotiations. I would like to see it through. And to the extent that we can, if things are right now fixable, I think we owe it to everybody involved, both the people who work for the town and the people who from the outside are affected by these as residents of the town, that we do everything we can to bring peace to a situation that has sort of boiled over quickly, really quickly. In the course of a week, we saw it become a pretty active news story.
Sure, and one of the aspects of that is the relationship between the chief and the town manager, and kind of the town manager's overall role in government. And so you've kind of been characterized as pro-town manager. Is that a fair characterization? Because it seems to be very black and white, and again, just on social media, there's a town manager camp and a police chief camp, and you're in the town manager camp. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, well, Look, I approach this like I approach every single decision that comes before the board, and ever will, by the way. If somebody wants to characterize my position as pro this or that, I wish they would at least hear my full statement, and in this case, wait for a vote, because we haven't taken any vote one way or the other. Someone sent me a link to another smack show where I was told that I supported this or I didn't support that. And I've been vocal about one thing, that if a vote came on a particular action concerning the town manager, that my vote would be no in that case. Anything beyond that, I've been very careful with my words, because I want to know all of the facts of the situation. I want to weigh them all. I want to hear from everybody, and then I'll come out with a decision. And I promise you it will be thoughtful. And I do know that most people who have responded don't have all the information. And I'm not talking about the principals involved. What I'm talking about is the people who would comment and tell me what the right decision is. If I know more information than someone else does, I'll certainly tell what I can within the bounds of the open meeting law. And if I still can't convince them, we can walk away with an an even-handed disagreement on things. But as of this time, that situation hopefully will be resolved, and everybody will walk away a little more content than they are right now. But I think peace for the town means we don't play these things out on the news, and we let them be worked out by reasonable people with reasonable thoughts on things. I think that can still happen.
And so just to clarify, you said the only thing you mentioned about voting no on would, and not to put words in your mouth, but that would be dismissing the town manager. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I mean, you see and I do go on social media, because those people seem to be active on these issues. And I think if there's an opportunity where I can express my opinion in long form, to the extent that I can, I've answered all these questions. And the people who I've seen posting in a particular thread on social media, they've focused on different components of it, but one has been focused on firing the town manager, and with the expectation that the chief will come back if we fire the town manager. Well, I don't know that, and the chief, I don't think, has said that he would come back if we fire the town manager. I'd like to hear that, and maybe we will in an upcoming meeting. But on the issue that the chief cited as the reason he was submitting his retirement, and it was a one-page letter that says, "I'm retiring from the town of Stoughton," I would not vote to, and this is my exact statement, paraphrased, but because I don't remember the exact statement, but the statement that I made was, over that issue, I would not vote to fire the town manager. Now, if there's some other particular issue that we want to discuss, and if as a policy matter, firing the town manager and moving on would be the best for this town, sure, I'll fire the town manager, because that's what we do in the Board of Selectmen. We make the best decisions for the town. If we do things in a knee-jerk fashion, we're not serving the best interest of 27,000 citizens of Stoughton. No way we are. And that particular situation is sort of expanded outward with more allegations that I would like to hear more of, but some of which I think are unfair.
Well, I'll throw one out there right now where the forum to respond is your role in being called as a witness or subpoenaed, I believe would be the right term, as a witness in court in relation to what happened at Cedar Hill with the human resources director was cited, or he was indicted rather, for role in, he's accused, has not been, the case is not completely played out yet, but you were called to testify. What was your role, as much as you can say?
Sure.
Here?
No, actually, be willing to tell it all, because I did see someone posted something that said that I showed up as a witness for the human resources director, which is false. I was served with a subpoena to come in and attend the clerk's hearing, and I was served by Mr. Kelly's attorney. Now, I suspect I know why, and I did speak with the attorney when I got there. As an attorney and as someone who's local, I was someone who he could both find and know that I would appreciate that when you get a subpoena that you would show up in court, because I was called to testify on very specific things. Whether or not an alcoholic beverage license was issued to the woman who was operating Cedar Hills concession, and what the process was that we went about that. And that was in in a hearing that, without getting into legal niceties, that was in a hearing on an application for a criminal complaint. And my testimony lasted all about 5 minutes. There were two attorneys there, one for the Commonwealth of Mass, one for Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly was there also, and then there was a clerk magistrate. And the two attorneys that I remember didn't ask me a single question because the clerk magistrate asked all the questions, about 5 minutes worth. And I think I was the third or fourth witness that was called in. Pretty sure I was the only selectman because after I was gone, there was nobody else there and nobody before me that I saw. And that was it. I testified that this concessionaire came before the committee, that we did grant a series of licenses. It's complicated the way we did it because we could only grant one-day licenses to this woman, but we wanted her to be in business at the time because the town only makes money if she's in business. So we gave her a series of one-day licenses, and I discussed the process of that she came in, she asked us, and that we granted them. It was like 5 minutes worth of testimony, but and that was about it. But the characterization of my testimony for people who weren't there has been part of the political season that I guess I have to expect. But I think people that I know who know me as a fair-minded person would not. I wouldn't have gone if I wasn't subpoenaed. But I was, so of course I did, because I appreciate that I can't defy a subpoena. And
well, there's plenty of other topics to
Sure.
get to, and I'm sure that these will come up in many other forums. But you mentioned Cedar Hill, again, kind of going back globally. It's been something that the Board of Selectmen and the town in general have struggled to be able to find a concessionaire to stay there and succeed in long term. And I know that there was a request for a proposal out to potentially privatize the golf course. What's the best fix for Cedar Hill?
I think you've characterized it right, because we've hacked this one over quite a bit. First, just to go back, we have had problems finding a concessionaire for the Cedar Hill golf course. We wanted someone to come in there who served, hot dogs, hamburgers, and beer, or all alcoholic license, but that's the basics of it. The woman who we did give I'm getting to the answer to your question just in a roundabout way. We gave her the license because she was the only one applied. And that's pretty typical because we're having trouble getting people to apply under the request for proposals that we put in right now. In my mind, I think this is a good avenue to explore, to see if we can find someone who would like to come in and operate that. If you ask the town manager's position, he has maintained that it will be nothing that is wildly profitable, but it'd be a nice amenity to the community that if it can only not lose money, we would be okay. I think it actually did better than it has in recent years, this past year. I think we can't limp along forever because that's an enterprise account that we fund from, meaning all of the income goes into a specific account. We pay for it out of that account, and what we can't pay for, we actually have to supplement from the general fund. And if we're going to limp along with that forever, I think we probably are best finding someone who's professional in these sorts of things to tell us whether it would be viable. We had a discussion through the budgeting season. The superintendent of the course came in front of us, and I asked him a question. I just happen to represent a golf learning facility in Rockland, and it's a small executive course, and I know that there is a trend out there for shorter golf courses where people can get on and off in less than 4 hours, like 2 hours. So it might just be that we have the perfect size golf course for the way the golf industry is trending. But I'm not a golf industry expert, and I know the 4 colleagues on the board that I sit with aren't either, and I know the town manager and everybody who works for the superintendent, by the way, agreed with me on the point, and we do get some spillover, for example, from DW Field Park Golf Course. So he sort of thought that was a decent idea. If we're going to be fully vested in that golf course, there are experts out there who know the industry, and they can come in. And I know that because I've worked with a business that hires them or has hired one in particular. They could come in and tell you, do this, do that, and do that, and you should be okay. And if he says this golf course is just not the kind of thing that will ever make money for the town, then we move to Plan B. But none of us are expert in the golf business. And it goes back into what I said earlier is I'm not going to make a knee-jerk decision based on any one particular thing. I want to hear from everybody, and certainly people who know more than me on any issue.
Well, I want to move down Park Street to the land behind the South Elementary School, which is otherwise known as the Line and Lumber property off of Park Street. And so there is an article on the warrant for town meeting that's been...
Oh, go ahead. Let me finish your question.
Sure. To consider transferring the property from school committee control to the Board of Selectmen.
That's right.
And so this issue, kind of pits, should land even be in the school's control, period? It's all one town versus the town wants to put a public safety building there. The school kind of wants to save that land for the possibility of maybe a new South School would be going there. What's your take on this issue?
Again, this is where limited information actually hinders the decision-making process. We can do both if we want to. That land there, it has land that's behind where the South School is right now, and then there is another parcel of land that is separated from that by a strip of privately owned land. So actually the line lumber land that we're talking about right now is actually two parcels. We consider it as one, but there's a strip of privately owned land that separates the two. The question is whether we can put a South School is also one of the schools that we need to replace because it is, again, like the high school. Again, I'm talking about other programs that I've done today.
And we can get to the high school later in this show.
South School is substandard right now for an elementary education school, and we would like to be able to do something new school, add rental project, we'll find that out, whatever it is, but we need land first. And that land also has to serve a certain geographic area, it has to serve that South School community right now. So we can't move it anywhere in town. It has to pretty much be where it is. So the question is whether we can put another South School, if we needed to build another South School, in that same parcel. And we've also identified that as the most ideal location for a public safety building if we wanted to do that.
And that would again be police and fire together.
Right. And that building actually takes into account a number of different things. What people in this town will pay for insurance rates based on fire response times, the best and most central location for response for police, fire, and all that, and also just amenities-wise, that it will allow us to build a sufficiently sized facility to do all those things. So we think, when I say we, I mean the Board of Selectmen actually hasn't voted to submit that public safety building to town meeting just yet. But there was an article on it to take that land, as you correctly pointed out of exclusive school committee control and make it part of the town's inventory of property so that we could put a public safety building there. I suspect that article will be withdrawn or dismissed from town meeting because that's coupled with the public safety building, which isn't on this town meeting warrant. But I also do think that we can do both there. We did have, I know, some preliminary engineering review, I don't want to say anything elaborate, that looked at it and thought that there is plenty of room where the South School sits right now to build a sufficiently sized building for the student population there, and also build a public safety building on the other divided parcel nearer to Park Street.
Sure. And so you mentioned the high school building project, and so natural transition into that topic. And that's been something you've been very involved with. You're the chair of the high school building committee. So to ask you, are you in favor of a new high school would be a waste of time. So rather, you'll have to make the case to voters as to why they need a new Stoughton High School. So, in a couple of minutes, what is that case?
Well, Well, the case is actually somewhat different because I think if you asked everybody, they would say, sure, we would love a new high school. Where they get caught up in is how much is it going to cost me, and isn't there something cheaper, I think some people would say. So the case is this, is that we don't educate, our high school right now where children learn from grades 9 to 12 was built in 1926, 1950, I want to say 52,
55, and 65.
Right.
Yep.
So, and each of those components of the building is substandard for what high schools need today by Department of Education standards, and just from a facility standpoint, they're old and they are inefficient, and we pay more than we should in all sorts of things like heat, and they don't meet what students do today in learning today. So the case for it is this. If we want to do the best for Stoughton children education-wise, we hired the best education expert in the world, we're told, Frank Locker Associates. You can look it up online. He's actually from Massachusetts. He came to Stoughton, he met with school administrators, and he scoped out for us what a 21st educational program should look like. We put that down on paper, and we said, where can we do that? And we figured out that the only way we could do that would be on the current location with a new high school. Reason why is because we can't even renovate what we have right now. There are components of the high school built in 1926, for example, Building A, that has to be torn down and there's nothing else you can do with it. That walls leak water. The brick is actually bowing out. There are other parts of the building, the gym, for example. We have to have tournament games as away games because our gym doesn't meet. Our gym is right now half of what a gym for our size student population would need, and it's not fair to the students of Stoughton High. They know that they go to school in a substandard high school. Town deserves good things, and we deserve that for our students. If every student in today's Stoughton High School were here today, I think we owe them all an apology that we're talking about something that they'll never see. So for future generations who are now in the grade schools that will enjoy this high school, because I'm confident it will pass. It sells itself when we bring it to the people, I promise you that. If we're going to provide our community with the best high school we can, the new high school on that location, after a year of feasibility study, and $1 million, by the way, not our choice, that's what it costs, tells us that what we've proposed is the best way. And if we wanted to just renovate what we have, that would be substandard and would actually cost just as much, because between hazardous waste abatement and certain components that have to be torn down and rebuilt, we really don't have a choice but to build new. It costs just as much to add on and renovate what we have as it does to build from the ground up. And the other thing I'll say is this, is that the cost of it right now seems like a lot. That goes down over time because it gets amortized like your mortgage does. So it will be a sharp hit to most taxpayers. But what we know about towns that have built new schools generally, is that has a profound impact on the community. Property values, businesses. When people go away and they move out of town, they look back at what's happening in town. Aside from seeing what's happening with the police chief today, they also want to know what's going on in the high school. They don't want to know how many chairs IKEA is selling. They want to know what's happening with the high school. It's a source of pride and really the heart of the community. That's where we start if we want to do anything in this town that's special.
And so that's certainly something that voters will be weighing in on, and as a Board of Selectmen member, something that I've seen you and the other members having to weigh on is with this project and its cost looming in the near future, also having to make budget decisions with that in mind. And one of those was when the police chief came forward with a request for 6 officers, and only, as of right now, 3 are in the budget. Decisions like that, how can the townspeople, kind of be having to receive, I won't want to say less services, but maybe not as much as they could have received because there's other projects going on? Just kind of like talk about the balance of having to weigh the immediate needs with the future needs of, the building project.
Budgeting's tough every year. No less than, this year is tougher than we've ever seen because of these capital projects. But I don't agree with the premise that there will be, and I know you didn't really intend it this way, but
Sure.
that there will be any reduction in services.
Right.
There's a cost involved in everything. We could pay for everything right now if we wanted to go to the taxpayers and say, let's override Proposition 2.5, pay for everything that everybody says, and then we have no problem. That I won't do. And we use a number for the high school right now that is not fair to anybody involved in the project, but we need some number because people want to know approximately what it costs, but we're still working to get that down because the building committee, I can speak for the building committee right now and say that we don't minimize the dollars of the average taxpayer and the impact on the average taxpayer. And that's that project that I'm involved in, but that goes in budgeting too. So when we talk about whether we can have this many new police officers, this many new vehicles at DPW or anything like that, everything gets weighed in the balance. But in the end, we've asked, and anybody who's watched the meetings would have heard me say this. We've asked the questions: what can we do without now that you're asking for, and let's put it on the horizon because you're saying we need it. But what's critical, and what can we actually spread over a period of time? So it happened in the fire department. We had certain requests where he actually categorized in priority order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way down to I think 9 or something like that. Expenses that went from critical need today to not necessarily today, but that's on the horizon. And one of the things that was critical was turnout gear, the suits they wear when they go to a fire. But helmets wasn't included in that. So I think what we came up with, maybe we can delay helmets, or maybe we can spread that cost over a series of years as opposed to take the hit all in one year. And I think we've actually done a pretty good job of some planning over time, some with these capital expenses in mind. We have a pretty healthy stabilization fund, and we've built up a building fund right now to pay for these things, some of these things, or to assist paying for some of these things, because it is going to be hit on the taxpayer, and we needed that to help. But last point, and I see the time ticking, you look at other towns around us, and they have dealt with overrides before. And they are dealing with cutbacks, substantial cutbacks. One adjacent town actually has been cutting employees and putting employees on part-time over the last several years. Stoughton has actually built up a pretty healthy financial profile, and I think that has only come about through planning. This is a tough year. We have more cutting to do. We can only cut. We can't raise anymore, I don't think. But everything gets prioritized. The way it went with the police chief is a pretty good way to explain it. We have to prioritize what we need today to keep services at today's level and what we can spread out over time so that we always have something that we're turning over and renewing and maintaining that level of services.
Well, TJ, thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Stoughton Spotlight, Conversations with the Candidates. These half hours go by quickly, but I encourage you to check out our other episodes with the other candidates running in the town election. As you can see on the screen, the town election will be held Tuesday, April 5th, 2016. I'm Jeffrey Pickette. Thanks for tuning in.